Damn, they're
and
pushing 400.
42, pushing 500.
500, that's what I meant to say.
42 points per game.
Yeesh.
Thank you for joining us for another segment of
How
How
bad
Bad Are
are
They?
they?
All right, welcome back to the Fourth and Long-Winded Podcast. It's been a while. It's been a couple weeks. How you been?
Yeah.
I miss.
We can blame me for this for the hiatus. I've had some family stuff going on, and I have not
I mean,
been able to record. It has been a while. I'm excited to get into this though.
yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation. Second to last. It's not really conference, but the independents are going to be discussed in the State of the Conference
Yeah,
series today. Was it 6 teams, 7 teams
it's eight
total?
eight teams
8
total.
teams. Okay. But yeah, make sure you like, comment, subscribe wherever you're watching, however you're watching, and however you're listening. Help
Click
us out
that
a lot.
button.
Click it now, or else we're not going to keep going. But no, we will. News of the week. There's some pretty big news, major news in the state of Ohio coming out today. Legendary head coach of Ohio University, Frank Solich, has retired, and this is a pretty sad day for the MAC conference, for Ohio University. It's just a big day in general for college football. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in all of college football.
Well, I think beyond being underrated, he is one of those guys that he has had some like character defects, some things that have happened in his life that not the greatest, but he stayed at Ohio. He's been there, I think it was like 14 years, and in 14 years he went to 10 bowls.
Yeah.
Ohio is not a program that has an extraordinary athletic budget. None of the MAC schools are, and to have that kind of sustained success, I'm not sure how many actual MAC championships he won, but they would have had him there forever. They would have kept him there until the day he died.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, any MAC school, any run of the mill kind of lower level school should keep someone like Frank Solich there. It was a phenomenal hire when they hired him, and then he just stayed, and that was honestly a little shocking. I think that there were times when some other programs maybe could have paid a little bit more money and wanted him to come right the ship there, but it was a really, really great hire for Ohio. And I'm not gonna lie, I am a little sad being a fan of the MAC. It's the land where it's the conference that gets pilfered. They
Pillaged.
Whatever. And then it's it is the exception to see a coach stay there that long. You either get fired or you move on. And that was not the case for Frank Solich.
I find the timing of this quite weird. I don't know about you, but it's awfully close to the start. I mean, with it we're halfway through July now, basically. I mean, football season's right around the corner.
So it's due to health reasons. He has, from what I understand, has had some heart issues that he's been dealing with for the last few years, and I think it's now kind of gotten to the point that he can't do it quickly anymore.
Understandable.
But that is my understanding of the situation. I'm not an insider or anything like that, but just based off the few reports that I've read today, that's kind of what I saw. But I don't know. I don't know that we're ever really going to see someone stay at a MAC school that long ever again.
Yeah.
It's going to take someone very special and a special program.
And honestly, it's going to take a level of success, but not outstanding success where then those big teams come in and want to pillage or pilfer. Is that the word you use? Pilfer your coaches away.
Yeah.
And he was a good coach, but he wasn't the best coach in the
No, and no one ever thought he was going to win a national championship, bring them to that level. But it's one of those things that me as someone who likes consistency, I'd love to see that for Bowling Green.
Yeah.
I would love to win a MAC championship every year, but I would also love to not be 2-10 3 years straight.
Yeah.
So, you get trade-offs with having really good years. You're going to have really bad years because you're going to lose your coach. But sometimes maybe you'll have it. I mean, he had like 2 or 3 10-win seasons, and
never won a MAC championship though. I did look that up. He made it. He made it 3-4 times, but he never won it. But
yeah, the MAC East is historically much weaker
really
than the West, and so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, so we just wanted to touch on that for a little bit. Close to our hearts here in both of us from Ohio. Cody's still living in Ohio, but he's a good coach. Sorry to see him go. One more thing we want to talk about before we get into the independent.
I have some kind of as well.
Okay, go.
Oh well, I just wanted to talk about the Bill Connolly put together the return. It's not really news, but over the last couple weeks, he has been putting out his information on the returning production of all FBS teams. And this is a particularly interesting resource that has come out. And I'm kind of blown away by a lot of the teams that you're seeing at the top, with Toledo leading the pack at number 1, has 97% returning production. That's incredible. Toledo wasn't a bad team last year either. So that team's going to be dangerous in the MAC.
Are you willing to pick Toledo knowing this information now? Can you bring yourself to pick? Exactly.
I literally cannot. But if someone asked me to had a gun to my head and said, if you get this wrong, then you're gonna die, then I'm picking Toledo to win the MAC.
All right.
So yeah.
You're not a true Falcon. True Falcon would choose death over picking Toledo.
I mean, you're not wrong. I do enjoy life though, so
fair enough.
Sorry. But then the other notable one at the 127th spot, the worst returning production, is BYU.
Yeah.
Who we will talk about a little later. I didn't have super high expectations. Notably, at 123 is Alabama.
Yeah.
So they're pretty low. Doesn't mean they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
But, they did just welcome the highest rated recruiting class in the history of college football. So
you did send me this article, this list. I looked through it and I remember noticing that there's only about 15 teams that are below 50%. The majority of the country is like over 70%.
Yeah. There's a lot.
It's a lot higher than average, and I think that's based on the eligibility NCAA due to COVID.
But I also think that a lot of kids this year, if they weren't going to go to the NFL or weren't going to be high rounders, they didn't go because they also knew there were also guys that sat out this season. And so they kind of knew that it wasn't going to be their year. I don't know. I remember reading some articles around the draft time that basically said the pool of people was lower because there were less kids in the draft. I don't really know why. But yeah, a lot of kids end up staying, and I think that's actually going to affect college football for quite some time, because every single person, if you were a freshman, you got an extra year of eligibility.
I wonder if the appeal to leave early because you need the money will change now because of the recent NIL.
Yeah.
Where if a guy's sole reason for leaving a draft early is maybe if he stayed another year, he would get a little bit better and maybe his draft stock would go up. But now he can make money more than probably most are already making already. But he can make money legally off of his own brand and
Yeah.
stay for another year, develop a little bit more. So
I,
you might see
I,
that a little bit more.
a lot of people say that NIL is going to destroy college football. I actually tend to think that it's going to improve college football.
It's going to make it a little bit more professional feeling. Honestly.
Yeah, it'll feel a little more professional. You'll see a lot more transfers happening. I think it's going to benefit some larger market teams and teams in bigger cities. I think that, the teams like Bowling Green and Central Michigan out in the middle of kind of nowhere are going to be a little bit affected by it, but they've got small town programs too, where I just saw a Bowling Green baseball player sign an NIL contract with a local t-shirt shop.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're going to be doing it too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a lot of people think it's just going to be for the football and basketball players are going to make no.
I mean, the first
in these towns, some of these teams like hockey in BG is way bigger, and Bowling Green hockey is way bigger than any other sport. Those guys can make so much money off local deals, restaurants in town.
Yeah, restaurants, even the local practice rinks. There's a few practice rinks in the area. Oh, come.
You can make appearances. Yeah.
I think it's and we've talking about NIL now, moved on.
But yeah, transition. We didn't get the chance to talk about it. We hadn't recorded.
So it's definitely something that is. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to hurt the sport. I think it'll make it better.
I think I'm in agreement with that. So in a similar vein to Cody bringing up a list like that, I have a list of my own that I found through an article on The Athletic by Max Olson. If I remember to, I'll put a link in the description down below. But it's he put the title of the article is College Football's Biggest Overachievers and Underachievers Based on Recruiting. So he used what's called the Massey ratings, which I'll admit I'd never heard of before this.
I've heard of the Massey rankings.
But he used the ratings from 2015 the ratings from 2017 through 2020 for Massey. And then he used the 24/7 composite recruiting rankings from 2015 through 2018. Because that's 2017 through 2020. The recruits from 2015 through 2018 are going to be affecting those years.
Yeah.
So that's just the background of where the study's coming from. All right. So the Power 5 top 10 overachievers based on recruiting. Got any guesses for number 5? Let's start with number 5. We'll go top 5.
Oh, 5. I mean, Iowa State, I feel like has to be somewhere in there.
Okay. We'll go to number 1 then, because Iowa State is at number 1.
Okay.
The highest overachieving of any Power 5 school in the country.
Yeah, I knew that one had to be in there. Matt Campbell is. Yeah, I think he's going to be at Iowa State for a long time to come. Looking at a lot of the media and stuff like that that's coming out of Ames, it feels different. Feels like he's building something there.
Interesting. All right. Well, I mean, he did turn down a lot of money
from Detroit. A lot of
money. They were ranked 19th in these Massey ratings, and their 24/7 composite rankings during that time is 57th. So they had a plus 38.
Yeah,
Second team, there's a monopoly on overachieving in the state of Iowa because number 2 is Iowa. They were ranked number 8 in the Massey ratings and 44th in 24/7's composite ratings, plus 36. Number 3, Wisconsin Badgers. I was kind of surprised by this because I think of them of having good recruits and kind of performing to where their level of recruits are. But during this stretch from 2015 to 2018, the recruiting class was ranked 40th, and their Massey ratings from 17 to 20 were number 11. So they had a plus 29.
Well, I think an interesting point with that too is you have to remember this past year, from what I understand, this was Wisconsin's highest rated recruiting class in their history.
Yeah.
And it was really good, but also Ohio State literally had more 4-stars than the rest of the conference.
Yeah.
So like, when you're competing with that, you have to overachieve.
You'll notice a theme throughout. I'll only go into depth on the top 5, but I'll list the top 10. You'll notice a regional theme on most of these most of these schools that I think is
Was one
interesting.
Minnesota?
No. Number 4 is Boston College.
Okay.
Which is pretty interesting as well. They're ranked 45th in the Massey ratings, and their 24/7 composite recruiting rankings was 72nd, so they had a plus 27. Number 5, not really surprised, Northwestern, 30th ranked in the Massey ratings, 24/7 recruiting rankings, 52nd. So they had a plus 22. The rest of the top 10, number 6, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, number 7, Wake Forest, number 8, Utah, number 9, and Indiana, number 10. So those are the top 10 in terms of overachievers.
Okay, interesting.
For the Power 5 conferences. That was
we don't need to go into Group of 5.
I mean, you do have your favorite team is a Group of 5 school, and I wanted you to.
All right, come on.
Okay. All right. Here's the Group of 5 top 10 overachievers. Number 1 is Appalachian State at a plus 90. So the best for the Power 5 was plus 38 with Iowa State. Group of 5, Appalachian State plus 90. Army was second, plus 76. Buffalo at a plus 74. Kind of just shows what I think what a good coach Lance Leipold is.
Yeah.
Air Force at number 4.
Yeah.
Plus 53. And then UCF was number 5 at a plus 51. The rest of the top 10, Ohio, we just had a conversation about Frank Solich. Ohio is number 6. Louisiana, Boise State, Memphis, and Wyoming round out the top 10. Okay. Noticeably, UC is not in the top 10. Where do you think they fell?
I don't know. Honestly, they recruit pretty well. They have for a while, and especially under Luke Fickell, recruiting has improved significantly. So, I mean, maybe top 15 somewhere in there, 15 to 20.
They're 11th. They're right outside the top 10.
Okay. So so those first few years he did a lot with not a lot. But his first year wasn't very good. Luke Fickell's first year wasn't. I think he went 4-8, so not great. But then his second year he went 11-3, which is pretty darn good. With what he had from leftover from Tommy Tuberville, and then his third year was kind of his first year with his guys, and then last year was a big year, and this year I think is going to be another really good year for him. I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
All
right. Sure. So now what everybody wants to know, the top 10 underachievers. Who are the worst of the worst? This is Power 5 only again, Group of 5. We're not doing underachiever in the Group of 5. So at number 1, should we build down?
Can I take number 1? Yes. No, yeah. So we'll
go from I'll run through 6 through 10 real quick. 10th was Kansas, 9th was Vanderbilt, 8 was Tennessee, 7's Nebraska, 6 is Illinois.
Okay.
All right. Number 5, UCLA. They're ranked 71st in the Massey rankings, and their recruiting composite ranking was 16th. So they're at a minus 55. Okay. Maryland was number 4. They have a Massey rating of 87 and recruiting rankings of 32, which feels high. I feel like
Maryland for some reason recruits really well, but isn't good.
Yeah. Minus 55 for them as well. Florida State was number 3.
Okay.
They ranked 61st in the Massey ratings and number 5 in the composite recruiting rankings, minus 56. Number 2 is very shocking until you think about what time period these numbers are coming from. It's Rutgers. Rutgers ranked 112th in the Massey ratings and 54th in the recruiting rankings. And you think about Rutgers before what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Schiano. Yeah. Schiano came back. They were terrible. Like they were laughing stock. They were terrible. So that makes more sense if you think before this past year they were terrible, and they just kind of had one above average season. So number 1, who's your guess?
Is it an SEC school?
It's an SEC school.
Is it Auburn?
Tennessee and Vanderbilt have already been named. Auburn? No, it's not Auburn. No.
Can I
Arkansas.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, okay. I just didn't want to just sit here and guess them. Just go through.
That makes a lot of sense. That wasn't going to be my second guess because I forget that Arkansas is an SEC school. They just, to me, for some reason, I think that Arkansas should just join the Big 12. But that is what it is.
Yeah, you're kind of we're talking, but Arkansas was ranked 103rd in ASSE ratings, so they're the 103rd best team over this stretch. 24/7 recruiting rankings, they're 30th. But so the reason you're not seeing a team like Auburn or anything like that, all the best teams are going to end up in the middle of this because naturally Alabama's got the number one recruiting class.
Yeah.
And they got they finish as probably number one in these ratings. So the difference would be 0. So they're going to be right in the middle of these rankings. Yeah, so Auburn recruiting rankings, top 10, maybe they are top 15, top 20 in the ratings. That's not a big difference. So they're not.
And maybe I'm just thinking disappointment from fans.
Yeah. In terms of expectation, expectations, Auburn, Texas is another one that you would think would be on massive underachievers, but they're also in that same boat.
That makes sense. That does make sense. That's a neat article.
So if I remember to, I'll put a link.
Yeah, I've been considering getting an athletic subscription.
I got mine for free. I got a year free of it it's from like a T-Mobile Tuesday. If you get T-Mobile, T-Mobile gives you they give you stuff on Tuesdays. You just log on to the app and they just like here. It's how I get MLB TV. MLB TV awesome. Is like it's like $100 if you buy it for the season, but through T-Mobile you get it for free for the season. So
all right,
yeah,
that's nice.
Little
T-Mobile
free plug. Free plug.
All right. So you were ready to move into our independence?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So as usual, we've kind of ordered this based on the 24/7 recruiting composite, based off of this past year's, so the 2021 class. And some of these teams, I don't personally think that we need to spend a ton of time on. And this first one, I don't really think we need to spend a ton of time on, is UMass.
What do you think of when you think UMass football?
Nothing.
Exactly. Completely irrelevant in the Division I college football.
Yeah, they were good when they were in the FBS. Unfortunately, the thing was they moved to FBS before their stadium was complete, because they originally used their stadium when they were in the FCS, and it's a nice stadium for FCS. But then they made the transition without any plans at all to upgrade the stadium. So then they realized they're in FBS and we can't use it. So now we have to travel 60 miles to Foxborough to use the New England stadium. And obviously no one in Foxborough went to UMass.
Nobody cares about UMass.
Exactly. No one cares.
They care about the hockey team sometimes.
Sometimes. And so, the whole FBS transition was just botched from the beginning. And it never recovered. It took them 6 years to finish their stadium because they couldn't fundraise because the team was so bad.
Yeah.
And they're one of the better hockey programs, one of the better athletic programs in the country for developing actual on-field, on-court success. And so how they handled that was terrible. That being said, interesting games. They do play at Liberty, which is kind of neat. They get to go down to Florida State and get their butts kicked. They play at Army, so that's cool. At New Mexico State. They've got a whole. They're basically playing the independent roundabout, and they are bad, and they're going to lose. Probably.
What to look forward to in their schedule is Game 6. It's the Toilet Bowl versus UConn.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to watch that now. And it's
such a terrible game.
UMass.
I do want to talk. Just one thing about stats, so we can move on to UConn, who is next. But just to get a picture of how, because UMass played 4 games in the 2020 season, just to get a sense of how bad they were offensively. They scored a total of 12 points in 4 games, averaging just 188 total yards of offense per game. Their leading passer completed 42% of his passes for 215 yards and 2 interceptions. Really can't get much worse than that.
They're so bad. And they're not going to get better, unfortunately. Like, I see no path back to relevance. I really think in the
just drop back to the FCS.
Yeah, I think in the coming years that's what we're going to see.
And it might be what we see for UConn as well. I don't understand how they still.
So I have a lot of things to say about UConn.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I recently was on Twitter, and which is my favorite social media, and I was trolling. It was some post by a writer that covers the American Athletic Conference, and he tweeted about, I don't even remember what the tweet was about. Someone that was clearly a UCF fan, like literally their Twitter name's like UCF #1 fan, says, I bet UConn is upset that they left the American. And then somehow a random UConn fan jumps in and they're like, nah, we got UCF on the schedule every year. They got to come to us. We've got, let's look at their schedule, because they named off like four teams that they're playing this year. We're playing Purdue.
They're playing
UConn, where we're going to Vanderbilt. It's like, these aren't good teams. And we're playing at Clemson. We're going to have a great time. Like, no, you're not. You're straight up going to have a bad time, dude.
I'm looking at their schedule. They're going 0-12. They're going 0-12.
Yeah.
At Fresno State. Well, no, they're going 1-11.
I think they could win at UMass. I think they're markedly better than UMass.
Nah, I think anything can happen in that game. We really don't know. The one win I was talking about was Holy Cross. They'll probably end up beating Holy Cross.
Okay. They're not beating Yale. They're not going to beat Yale. No. I do think they have a chance at beating Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is not great.
And I actually have second thoughts on the Holy Cross thing, because I'm pretty sure they made the FCS playoff as the Colonial.
They're not beating Yale. They're not. They're up in the air on Holy Cross. Yeah, UConn's going to be bad. I don't understand them. They built this beautiful. It's a beautiful stadium. When they transitioned to FBS, and honestly, to succeed in FBS, unless you're Notre Dame or BYU and have a religious following, you need to be in a conference. You can't succeed. I mean, this was a choice. They made the choice for basketball, which is obviously their moneymaker, and it makes sense. But it just feels like a waste of investment to give up on football. And that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. They're not going to try. And you can tell it by the schedule that they've created for themselves. You can. They didn't even try to work with the American Athletic Conference. They have teams that are basketball only. Like, hey, American, would you allow the football team to be here? I mean,
be a doormat for everybody else.
I think the American probably would have been like, yeah, okay, for like, here's $5.
Yeah.
And I think that UConn would have been better for it. I think that they're a bunch of idiots, and I hate them.
Because UConn does have potential. Like, they have a potential. They have a brand recognition. People know UConn. They know it for their basketball team, but they still know UConn.
And they've had flashes of success in football over the last 20 years. Believe it or not, Aaron Hernandez's second choice was
UConn. Yep.
Granted, he did live in Connecticut, but I digress. Yeah, UConn is what it is.
I'm just excited Purdue's going to have a win, man.
Which
is guaranteed
early
win.
in the season, too.
Yeah. All right. One last thing. We're going to start a new segment. We kind of started the last one. Just how bad are they? That's the new segment.
Very bad.
In 2019, because they didn't play at all in 2020, this will actually be their first season as an independent, because they didn't play last year. But in 2019, they allowed a staggering 467 yards per game and over 41 points per game. So
Wow.
that was How Bad Are They?
Yeah, that's pretty freaking terrible, man.
All right. New
Glad
Mexico
it ain't
State.
me. All
New
right.
Mexico State. Not quite as bad as the past two schools, but
Also, New Mexico State is also on my list of schools that I think should drop down to FCS. And I will give you a rationale for that. Their previous conference, the WAC, is coming back.
This is the thing you've been on for a while, the WAC.
I think they need to drop down to the FCS or stay. And I do think the WAC is going to try to bring all of their members into FBS status. I don't know how that's going to work. It's never happened as a full conference before. But I think just some undercover rumblings and different message boards that I've been trolling are kind of saying that. I think that they would be a perfect fit for the WAC. They could compete. They have that level of talent. And if they did come to the FBS level, all the teams except one or two would probably end up losing, most of their non-conference games, but they'd still have a conference championship to shoot for. And New Mexico State could be competitive in that. They will not be competitive in the majority of their games this year. Granted, they did do a better job at scheduling than most independents. They have some winnable, some games that don't look super tough. UTEP being one of them, New Mexico being one of them,
South Carolina State.
But they do play at Alabama. That's
UMass.
They play UMass. So and they've had a couple of seasons where I think New Mexico State has played UMass twice. Like they played at UMass one game, and then like 3 weeks later played at.
They're doing that with Hawaii this year. They're doing that.
Oh yeah, it looks like they are. Yeah, yep, yeah.
You got a home and home.
Have to do that. No one really wants to play New Mexico State at home, so you have to be creative. Yeah. But I think they did an okay job. They're going to win 3 to 4 games this year. I think
probably. They do have one advantage over basically every other Division I team. They've already played 2 games this year.
True.
They did 2 games against FCS opponents in the spring. It's kind of like basically live full scrimmages. That's basically what they were. But it's a benefit that it's a preseason that no other team has.
Yep.
They're not going to win the national championship because of that. But they played Tarleton State, who they lost to, and Dixie State, who they beat. So they do have that advantage. But before we move on to Liberty, it's time to bring back our favorite segment. Now become a regular on this show. How bad are they? All right, so they were just like UConn. They did not play in 2020. So these stats are from 2019, the last year that they actually played football, other than the spring games that we just mentioned. Their defense allowed 480 yards per game.
Damn, and pushing 400.
42, pushing 500.
500, that's what I meant, sorry.
42 points per game.
Yeesh.
Thank you for joining us for another segment of How Bad Are They? That's such a terrible idea to do that on a delay.
Yeah, that's really bad. It's not gonna go well.
All right.
Liberty. So the next team we have is Liberty, who I believe is markedly better than anybody that we've talked about so far.
Super exciting team.
Super exciting team. Super exciting coach. Hugh Freeze. Honestly, if they have an administration that backs them and wants them to win, I think honestly they want to get into a conference. I used to say that I think they'd be a good fit for the MAC, but I think that their aspirations are actually a little higher, and they have money to back it. Like they have a really good fundraising arm, being a evangelical school, and having all of that backing.
Also comes with questionable political donations.
Yeah, so definitely questionable, but it is what it is. I could see them shooting to try to be in the American. I think the American would look at adding them with another year of success. And they haven't been bad since they joined the FBS, and they were decent when they were in the FCS.
They were undefeated through 8 games last year.
I mean, that's solid team.
And they got a very exciting quarterback who could potentially be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and Malik Willis.
And they have the money to keep their coaching staff and to pay their coaching staff. Granted, like if Alabama and Clemson come calling, they're not going to be able to keep that. Yeah. But they have money that they could keep some Power 5 programs from poaching their coaches, which is something that a lot of schools don't have. Yeah. They have great practice facilities too. And when they built their stadium, it was literally built to expand. Like they built it with the fact in mind that they want it to eventually be an 80,000 person stadium. That was the vision of the president of the university at the time, who has since, I believe he resigned because he got caught with.
I don't know.
No. He resigned. This is fun.
I thought you were gonna say because he died. That's honestly where I thought.
No. So the person, the president of the university, his father was the founder of the university, and his name is Larry Falwell Jr. He got caught, from what I understand, it was something with him watching his wife do it with someone. Which is super evangelical, and got caught doing that on videotape and whatnot, and had to resign. But apparently,
technology, man.
Apparently, he still has a bit of influence.
A bit. I'm sure he has a little bit more than a bit.
Yeah. So this year, Liberty football is going to be questionable morals. They're going to be playing the Camels, and then they're at Troy. They play Old Dominion. They're at Syracuse. They're at UAB. They play Middle Tennessee. They play University of Louisiana Monroe, North Texas. Up until this point, I don't see a game they can't win. Then
it's these last 3 games that it's all going to be building up to. They should be undefeated leading into at Ole Miss, and then they play home to Louisiana, who we've talked about Louisiana in our Southern Belt episode. Louisiana is going to be really good,
and they didn't get to play last year, so this will be a really fun one. And then they play Army at home, and I actually think Army doesn't play well in the end of the season, so I think they could win. Honestly, I could see them being 10-2, if not 11-1 by the end of the season.
That Ole Miss game should be fascinating. You know, Hugh Freeze coming back to Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting to see.
That's gonna be a good game.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I feel good about Liberty. I honestly think they could be the team in the Independents that have the best record at the end of the season next year.
Yeah, we'll talk about Notre Dame, who's really the only other competitor in that field, in my view. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yep. All right. So Army. Yeah. So Army has 50 total commits. Interesting. With most of the service academies, because they have scholarships to give out, they just give them to random students, and then they play on the team. Because everyone is on scholarship there, so they can do that. Looking at their schedule, I don't have a ton to say about Army. We all know about Army.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's same shit. New year, it's the same thing.
Same thing. They brought back their coach, kept him from being hired away by Kansas, so that was a good thing for them. I'm actually pretty happy about that. Looking at their schedule, the first 3 games are all winnable. Should win. Their next 2, Miami. They're bringing Miami to West Point, and then
Miami, Ohio.
Miami, Ohio, not the U. Then they're at Ball State. I think that both of those games could be a little tougher for Army, but I think they win against Miami and lose against Ball State.
I agree. They probably split those.
Yeah. I think that they go to Wisconsin, put up a fight, and lose. I think the Wake Forest game is a toss-up.
Yeah.
Then they play Air Force in Texas, which there's apparently a lot of Air Force.
It's going to be played in Arlington. Yeah, there's
Arlington, Globe Life Field.
Yeah. I know down near San Antonio is where like Air Force basic training is. So
yeah. So that could be almost like an away game.
Yeah.
Then they play Bucknell, UMass, Liberty, and Navy. So through their schedule, there's only one game in there that I think that they absolutely should lose. They will inevitably lose 2 or 3 others. So my prediction is 9-3.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. 8-4, 9-3.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah. Craig, next up, we got BYU.
I got a little bit to say about BYU. So
yeah, I don't have too much to say. They were good last year. They're also
so we brought them up in the article that you brought up in our news section at the beginning of the pod, and they're they have the lowest returning starters of any team in the entirety of Division I football or FBS football.
Yep.
So obviously they're losing Zach Wilson. They're also losing a couple offensive linemen, and their offensive line was really, really good last year. But the big one, they're losing a lot on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. 7 of their top 10 tacklers from last season are gone. It was a top 10 total defense last year, and they were also 4th in scoring defense last year. Yes. Losing 7 of its top 10 that's going to regress. That's going to go way down. Offense losing a player like Zach Wilson along with other offensive weapons and the offensive line, they're just not going to be as good as they were last year. I do think they are going to be competitive. They're not going to be terrible. Like they're going to be pretty decent.
They're going to be your typical BYU team.
Yeah.
They're going to be good, not great.
Because another reason it's going to be a down year, I believe, is because of the schedule. I don't know if you've taken a look at the schedule.
It's on the tougher side.
It's very tough, in my opinion. Yeah. They don't really have an easy game in here.
No,
other than two. Idaho State and at Georgia Southern are its 2 easiest games.
Yeah. So basically, they're almost playing a Pac-12 schedule.
Yeah.
They're playing my ideal Pac-12 schedule. They've got Arizona State, Utah, Utah State. So all of those teams are going to be decent. They have Boise State, which that's going to be a tough game. They've got Washington State, a lot of state games. They play Baylor. That should be a tough game. Virginia, that's going to be a tough game. USC,
they finished the season at USC too.
That's just tough.
That's a tough schedule.
I'm sorry for BYU fans. It's going to be a tough year for you.
I believe that the team last year, while being better than this year's team, would have had a tough time with that schedule. Yes. Like they wouldn't have been in the record wise, they wouldn't have been as good as they were last year playing this schedule.
I think they would have had a winning record last year.
Yeah.
But not as good as they were.
No.
Yeah.
I do believe it's going to be a pretty disappointing season especially after last season, all the hype and being in the play and the that top group of 5 team conversation.
Yeah. Maybe they'll surprise us.
Maybe they'll what?
Surprise us.
Maybe. I mean,
they won't, but maybe they will.
Yeah. Probably not.
Probably not, but they could.
They could.
They coached. I mean, they coached up some great kids. They had a lot of kids go to the NFL. So
yeah,
maybe they've been coaching some kids up.
Maybe it was just a golden generation.
Maybe it's something in the water at the instead of caffeine. Maybe they figured something out with not drinking caffeine.
What are you saying? Steroids? There's steroids in the water? Oh. All right. We're gonna get attacked for saying that. Did you? I don't know if you. I don't know if you've looked at our Utah video, like the separate video that I made from our conversation or from the Pac-12.
I have not.
Our Utah video is our most watched video. It's got damn near 100 views at this point, and
All
it's got our
right.
most It's got our most comments, but all the comments are just like, "You guys don't know what you're talking about. You don't know Utah football. We're gonna go 12-1 or 12-0, 11-1."
I mean, Utah fans are like that.
I could respect.
I can respect it. Yeah,
the
sure.
love and the dedication, but I do think it's a little bit delusional.
A little bit.
bit. So if BYU fans are anything like Utah fans, which I'm imagining they might be even worse.
Maybe.
Just in my head, I just feel like they're worse. I feel like that meth comment might get us attacked.
It might. All right. Next up, Notre Dame.
Last one.
All right. So obviously Notre Dame is on a different level than every single one of these other teams. They have held the independent number one recruiting class the entire time that the 24/7 sports composite has existed. They will always hold that spot. Currently, or their recruiting class was 9th in the country last year. Their previous year was 18th, and right now for next year they're at number 2. And they've got a hell of a recruiter. Marcus Freeman is their defensive coordinator, is probably also their best recruiter. It will
coming
shock
from UC. He's coming from UC. This is his first season as defensive.
Yes, this will be his first. It will shock me if Notre Dame. I think he improves Notre Dame significantly on the defensive end, which is where I think that they needed the most improvement.
That's interesting because I feel like they were better. The best part of their team was their defense.
I think so. Knowing Notre Dame and like how they like especially how Brian Kelly likes to do things, they don't typically. I mean, I can't remember a time in which they've ever typically ran the score up and had a high flying offense. So having an extremely strong defense is the core of their winning. It would shock me if Marcus Freeman is not a head coach somewhere in the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, that fast? You think it happens? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there was talk about him being a head coach this year if he wouldn't have accepted the Notre Dame job. He had some interest from smaller schools. I could see him being a head coach at a Power 5 school in the next 4 years. I have that. I think honestly, Cincinnati's success is largely in part due to Marcus Freeman.
Okay, so does that make you worried about UC for the next couple of years?
Extremely. Yeah, I'm very worried. If I'm being entirely honest, if Luke Fickell, I think this year they're going to be very good. I think also that Notre Dame has a very good advantage over UC when they play each other this year on October 2nd, because Marcus Freeman has spent his entire time as a defensive coordinator watching every single player for the Bearcats.
Yeah.
So
and recruiting them.
He knows their weaknesses. He knows what they do. He can tell his players what they do.
Yeah.
So that's a huge strength for Notre Dame to win that game. And it's honestly what makes me most fearful of that game. Had they not hired Marcus Freeman, I would be much more confident as a Cincinnati fan going into that game, thinking, okay, yeah, we can definitely compete with them, and it's a toss-up on the win. I think Notre Dame has the edge because of that, going into that game, particularly. Yeah. That being said, if Luke Fickell does really well this year, gets a Power 5 gig, which he stayed and not taken a lot of not taking the wrong offers, but if the right one comes along, Luke Fickell leaves. Marcus Freeman is the next head coach at Cincinnati, 100%. And if he's not, the Cincinnati fans will go wild. Unless he turns it down and doesn't want the job, which I also don't see happening.
Well, then that would just make them hate him if he turns it down.
Very true. Well, we already hate Brian Kelly. Why not?
Yeah.
But that's a conversation on Cincinnati. Sorry, we got so off topic.
Yeah, no worries.
No, but Notre Dame is going to be good this year. I think their defense is going to be very good this year. I don't think they're going to be quite as good as last year because their offense took quite a bit of of
Pretty big hit.
a pretty big hit. So I think on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think they're going to be able to move it quite as well as they were able to this last year. And
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah.
agree. I'm maybe not quite as optimistic on you on their season. I think it's going to be relatively a down year. Obviously, the goal at Notre Dame right now is playoffs or bust, pretty much. Like that's the only thing they can really shoot for. They don't have a conference championship they can get. They're trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to win the national championship. And they're losing their starting quarterback. They're losing 2 starting offensive linemen. They're losing a bunch of guys on defense. Like there's the guy that gets drafted by the Browns. I can't remember his name now. Defensive edge rusher that was really good. So I think, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I think they're going to find it really difficult this year.
Yeah.
They're getting Jack Cohn, a transfer coming in from Wisconsin, who's probably going to be their starting quarterback. And I have a bias against Wisconsin quarterbacks that aren't Russell Wilson. And I just don't think that is
that the kid that started so well?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 years ago, he came in.
Oh, okay. No, the Wisconsin had a kid. He started out the season like phenomenal, like threw an absurd amount of passes for touchdowns in their first
lefty
game. Yeah. So it's not that kid.
No, it's not that guy.
Okay.
He came in for, I don't know if you remember this Wisconsin quarterback, Alex Hornibrook. I don't know if you remember him, but Hornibrook got hurt a couple of years ago, and then Cohn came in for him. But then, the guy that you're thinking of this past year, the guy came in, he took over for Cohn because I think he was a higher recruit or something like that. But so it's looking like he's going to be the starter, which doesn't give me a lot of excitement. It doesn't encourage me. They're going to be starting two true freshmen on the offensive line, which, even though it's Notre Dame and they just churn out offensive linemen like it's their job, it basically is at this point. But I think it'll take a little bit for these true freshmen to come in and establish themselves.
I think that you have a very good point. I'm not going to lie. I think that Brian Kelly is a very good coach.
I agree with that. I'm not saying they're going to have one of those 6 and 6
I just think they're going to be slightly better than you think.
I don't think they're going to be in the playoff conversation.
I mean, if they're undefeated at the end of the year, they are.
Yeah, but I don't think but I don't think they're going undefeated.
Let's look at their schedule. Florida State, Toledo, and Purdue. I think they win all 3 of those.
I like the return of the Purdue Notre Dame rivalry. We don't have a good record in it, I know, but I don't know. I just like playing Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's I like in-state games. It's always fun, and it's easier for everyone to try.
And there's a long history in that Purdue Notre Dame football rivalry.
And then they play Wisconsin, and I think that's a tough game. I think it's winnable.
It's winnable, but I think I
think Wisconsin takes that game. If we're being honest, Cincinnati, if Notre Dame loses to Wisconsin, they're not losing to Cincinnati. If they win to Wisconsin, I think Cincinnati has a little bit more of an advantage because they're not angry.
Yeah.
And I, that doesn't really make sense, but it makes a lot of sense to me. So
yeah.
Then they play at Virginia Tech. I think that's a win. They play.
I think it could be a competitive game, but I think they should win.
It could be, but Virginia Tech just isn't what it used to be.
No.
Then they play at USC, and I'm just not hot on USC yet.
I am.
I'm not hot on them, but I think it's at Notre Dame, so I think that they win. And then they play my North Carolina Tar Heels, and they're going to lose that game.
Yeah, they are.
They are going to lose that game badly. My Tar Heels are going to roll in to South
Bend. You were right.
South Bend. Well, yeah, they're going to roll in. They're going to drop 80 points on them.
They're going to put their Tar Heels on top of their little Irishman
on top of touchdown Jesus.
Okay.
And then after that, they play Navy. Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Stanford, all of those, I think they win.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
But see, the Navy game, the game between Notre Dame and a military academy is always weird. Like like Navy comes close to beating them. I don't think at Stanford is the last game of the season. I don't think that's going to be the easiest game. All I'm saying is I don't think they're going to be in the playoff conversation this year, and to not be in the playoff conversation is probably going to take 2 losses. And I'm thinking Wisconsin, USC. I think they lose both. USC, I could see 3
think
losses.
in this year they have to go undefeated. Have to go undefeated. And they have 2 big road bumps with a couple other small ones. Cincinnati being the small one, Wisconsin and USC and North Carolina being the big ones.
Yeah.
USC and Cincinnati are small road bumps for me. Wisconsin and North Carolina are the big ones. I think those are going to be the toughest games that they have all year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it could go either way. I can see them being 10-2. I can see them being 12-0. I can see them winning every game. It's not inconceivable to say they could win every single game. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's not inconceivable. Crazy things have happened.
Yeah. Yep, that's all I have on Notre Dame. And that's going to wrap up our discussion on independence, and probably going to be the end of the episode. It was a good episode. I thought it was fun. We had an introduction of a new segment today. We had How Bad Are They? That's a segment,
all
probably
right.
This episode only. But
yeah, all right. So for our next episode, we're going to be doing the ACC. We'll be back next week with that. And I'm excited to do the ACC. It's our final topic, and then I think we can start moving into some other kind of more interesting scenario type topics, at least while we're building up to the beginning of the college football season. I think we're at 63 days left.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I'm getting excited. I think the first weekend of the year New Mexico State plays, and I think that's the only game with someone else. And then the first real weekend is kicked off with Bowling Green State University playing Tennessee on Thursday.
Yep.
But if you like our content, please like, subscribe.
Follow us on Twitter.
If you don't like our content, please leave nasty, angry, Utah-themed comments.
I will respond, and I will tell you every reason why you were wrong.
We do appreciate comments. We always get a kick when we read them. It means a lot to us. So
yeah,
thank you all, and have a great week.
Talk to you next time.